I'm going to be looking at a game in C3i number 25 called Battle for Moscow. It's got a 4-page rule book, which is kind of neat. This is I believe this was designed by Frank Chadwick, and it's a quick play game. I think it's a great filler game, and it does some things real well. The scale is fairly at the high level. The Germans are represented by corps. They have infantry corps and panzer corps. The Soviets are represented by infantry armies, and they have one shock army that comes in as a reinforcement, and that is it. The because you got to remember, the Russian armies basically were what German corps were, but they did have more men in them. I think the rules say that the German corps had like 25,000 soldiers. The Russian army corps had 40,000, so they had a lot more men. That's depicted in this game. The asymmetry between the two armies is shown in a very elegant way, kind of through the sequence of play. And when you're playing through a turn in this game is about 1 to 2 weeks worth of time, and you're just going up to like December 1st of 1941. This is, the Barbarossa drive on Moscow. So the game captures it very well. The sequence of play is replacements, German turn, replacements, and then the replacements are on the turn record track. The Germans basically get 1 per turn if they can use them, and the Soviets get, I think, 5 or 6 per turn depending on the turn. So the Germans, you get replacements. You can either put a half-strength unit on the board that's in your dead pile, or you can take an in-supply unit and flip it to full strength and use one of those replacement points. Then the Germans, after replacements, they get a special, unique to German panzer movement. So any of the panzers can move. And the Soviets don't have that. So this favors the Germans a little bit. Then there's a combat phase. And so combat is not mandatory, but you can attack whatever you want to if it seems profitable. And the terrain effects are really mostly the only thing that affects combat. And it's a shift 1 to the left if you're in forest or, fortified areas or a city. So anyway, that's kind of what happens during the combat phase. And then after the combat phase, the German army can move. That means all the infantry can move, and the panzers actually get to move again. And the zones of control are sticky. Once you hit one, you got to stop. If you're in one, you can move. But if you hit another one, even if it's the 1 hex move, ZOC to ZOC, you stop. So that's kind of how the German player turn goes. The Soviets get their replacements. They get a lot more than the Germans, but they don't get a panzer movement phase. But what they do get is a rail movement phase. So any unit on a rail can move along that rail with their movement points, but that gives them extra ability. And then, of course, they'll get to move again during the regular movement. Then the Soviets have a combat phase, again, similar to the Germans. And then after that, the Soviets can move all of their units. So that's pretty much what happens. There are 2 turns that are mud, which mean you can basically only move 1 hex that turn, regardless of your movement point allowance. And then, some of the units are reduced half strength in attack. So the panzers are half strength in attack. That's basically what happens in this game. The Germans win by capturing Moscow. The Soviets win by retaining Moscow and at least one other city. So I think it kind of favors, if the Russians, the Soviets can have a good defense, I think it favors that. Anyway, I'm going to play through this game really quickly. for the remainder of this video. So here we are on turn 1. It's October 2nd, 1941, and we start with the German movement phase. And I had the 56th Panzer Corps advance on the railroad in the north part of the map, and then in the center, the 41st Panzer Corps went along the center railroad, and then the 23rd actually drove in and captured Bryansk. And both sides, suffered heavy losses in that fight there, but you see an overview of what's happening here in the first picture, and then the second picture shows this battle. And the Germans have captured Bryansk. Then the Soviets get 5 replacement points. They bring 3 units up to full strength. They bring on 2 new units, and then I moved the 16th Army to Moscow, then the 10th to Moscow, and then the 40th went into the woods along the forested area on the center railroad, which is to the west, and then the 30th went also to the center railroad in the forest, and then the 43rd Army went to Vyazma. And in this third picture, you can see what the Soviet defenses look like at this point in time. So we go to turn 2. It's October 10th, and the 24th Panzer is brought back to full strength. And then this next photo, number 4, you can see the progress after the German Panzer movement is completed. And then I did a number of combats. I had the 40th and 41st Corps attack the 43rd Army, which retreats from Vyazma. And then the 47th and 50th Panzer Corps end up eliminating the 20th Infantry Army near Smolensk. You can see in photo 5 here what things look like after these combats. Then I had movement, so the 57th Corps moves to the outskirts of Moscow. The 24th Panzer Corps goes into Kaluga, the 6th Infantry Corps into Bryansk, and the 41st Panzer Corps moves into Vyazma. And you can see in photo 6 what things look like after the movement. Don't worry though, the Soviets get plenty of replacements. So I brought the Soviet 18th Army at Moscow to full strength, the 16th Army in Moscow to full strength, and then I brought back 3 armies which are reduced. Then I used the Soviet rail movement. You can see the effects of that in this picture number 7. I chose no combat this time, but during movement, I was able to move the 20th Army into Tula. The 29th Army moved to the railroad just south of the Moscow fortifications. The 49th Army moved into fortifications northwest of Moscow, and the 19th Army to Orel. And you can see in photo 8 here what things look like after the Soviets reset some of their defenses. We go to turn 3. This is October 17th, and it's mud. So that heavily restricts movement, and it makes panzers not very effective in combat. So the 24th Panzer Corps does accept some replacements and comes back to full strength in Kaluga. And then during my panzer movement, I really wasn't able to do much, but I did move the 56th Panzer Corps into Rezh. Then during combat, the 41st and 56th Panzer Corps attacked the 43rd Infantry, and it did retreat. You see the results of that combat in photo number 9 here. Then I took the German movement, which they weren't able to do very much, but photo 10 shows what the battlefield looks like in this sector after German movement. Then the Soviets got 4 replacements. They were able to bring 4 units back to full strength. I chose no rail move this time, but I did arrange some Soviet combat, and I got the 49th Army and the 16th Army and the 29th Army to join together in an attack against the 57th Panzer. It was a 2-to-1 attack, and it ended in an exchange. Then I got another attack, the Soviet 10th Army against the 40th Panzer. I got another exchange. This was a 1-to-1 odds attack, and you can see that in photo 11. And then the Soviet 30th Army and the 32nd Armies attacked the 47th Panzer. I got another exchange, but this time the 47th is eliminated. And you can see the bad situation here in photo number 12. Then the Soviets, moved their forces into the best possible positions. That's shown in photo 13. We go to turn 4. It's November 1st, and the Germans rebuild the 47th Panzer Corps. It's reduced, of course, but it is back in play. And then I have the Panzer movement, which is heavily restricted because of the mud. And then I have some combat. I launched a massive attack against the 40th Army in the forest, the railroad forest. You can see in the picture it's completely surrounded. It's photo 14. And I got an exchange result. But I got rid of the unit. Then I took my movement. It was during mud, but photo 15 kind of shows the extent of the German advance up to this point. So the Soviets got 4 replacements, plus they got the 1st Shock Army as a reinforcement. And I made very limited rail moves, but I did launch a massive counterattack against the 57th Corps on the outskirts of western Moscow, and it was eliminated. I think the 16th, the 29th, and the 49th Army participated in this attack, and you see this in photo 16, and then photo 17 shows the aftermath. So that was a very successful Soviet counterattack, taking advantage of the mud to do this. In this next picture, number 18, you see that the German 49th Panzer is surrounded by the 2 infantry armies. One of these armies itself is surrounded, but there's another one in Tula. And as a result, the 49th Corps is eliminated, and one of the Soviet forces gets back into a better situation. Photo 20 here shows what things look like after the Soviet move, and it's starting to look like it's going to be difficult for the Germans to achieve their victory. So we go to turn 5. It's November 16th. Things are starting to look up weather-wise, and the 57th Panzer is taken as a replacement. And then after the Panzer movement, you can see in photo 21 what the German position looks like. They launch a number of attacks here because the clock is running. I mean, winter is coming. So they get a 3-to-1 attack against the 32nd Army, and that army is eliminated due to retreat into zone of control. Then there's a 4-to-1 attack against the 10th Army, which is in fortifications, and it has a retreat into zone of control, so it's eliminated. Then I launched a 5-to-1 attack versus the 40th Army, which is eliminated. Again, defender retreat into zone of control. And then I did a 2-to-1 attack against the 30th Army. I got an exchange, and this ended up reducing the 24th Panzer. And you can see at the end in photo 22 shows what the situation looked like at the end of combat. And then in this next photo, 23, after the German regular movement phase. The Soviets got 5 replacement points, so they got 2 new units and 3 repaired units. And then I made a railroad move to bring units in behind Moscow to fill in the gap as needed. And then I did launch a 2-to-1 counterattack against the 41st Panzer, but it was no effect. And photo 24 shows what things look like after the Soviet combat and movement. We go to turn 6, it's November 23rd. I got replacements to the 57th Panzer, and then I did the Panzer move, and then launched a bunch of attacks. I launched a 3-to-1 attack versus the 43rd Army in the forest, a 6-to-1 attack against the 30th Army west of Tula, which resulted in a defender eliminated. Then I did a 1-to-1 attack against the 19th Army just north of Arel, northeast of Arel, and it was a defender eliminated, but he retreated into a zone of control is how he got eliminated. And then photo 25 shows what things look like after the combat. And then photo 26 shows the scene after the Germans completed their movement. And I went to the Soviet part of the turn. They got 5 replacement points, 2 new units, and 3 repaired units. And I did no railroad movement, no combat. You know, I have the benefit of interior lines here right now. All eyes are on Moscow. But photo 27 here shows the Soviet position after their movement. So we go on to turn 7. This is the last turn of the game. The Germans get a replacement, and then they got to go to work, and they need some luck now. So I launched a 2-to-1 attack versus the 20th Army in Tula. You can see that attack in photo 28, and the result was defender retreat. And so in photo 29, you see that the 24th Panzer moved into Tula. I wanted to get that city away, but you can see there's another small city in the rear, which I think counts as a Soviet victory location. Then I launched another 2-to-1 attack against the 16th Army in the fortified position west of Moscow. You see them in photo number 30 here, and it's a defender retreat, and they get to retreat into Moscow, as you see in photo 31. And that's pretty much going to dash the German hopes. Photo 32 shows what the map looks like at the end. I mean, I really don't need to do the Soviet turn here because the Soviets have Moscow and they control that one city in the rear, Ryazan. So if that counts as the one city in addition to Moscow, the Soviets win. If only the major cities count, well, then it's a draw. So I'm not 100% sure on that, but this kind of went historically. A very good, quick playing filler game. This is Battle for Moscow. This one happens to be the version from C3i number 25. Thank you for watching, and if you have any comments, leave them in the comment section below, and have a great day.